So the definition for two similar polygons, that's what we're going to write down. Two polygons, two shapes, are similar if and only if, and there's two conditions for this. So the first one is if and only if all corresponding angles are congruent So that's the first part. Two polygons are similar if and only if all corresponding angles are congruent and all corresponding sides are proportional. Proportional. And we'll take a look at what proportional means in a little bit. But first, so this does involve quite a bit of drawing for the first part. We're going to be doing some checking, and then we will say if things are similar or not, and then write out a few other things that I'll define later on. So the picture, or actually, let's look at the first example. Example 1. Determine whether the polygon is similar. If so, write the similarity ratio and similarity statement. Determine whether the polygons are similar. If so, write the similarity ratio. I hope to get example 1 done before lunch, so we'll see. If so, write the similarity ratio and similarity statement. So the picture I want you to draw will be first the small shape, then the larger shape. So I'm going to draw a right angle, pretty much the same distance on each side here. And then that top side is also going to be a right angle, but I'm going to extend it out longer. So the top side is longer than the other one. Then I'm going to connect those two. I'll call that A, B, C, D. Then what I'm going to do is kind of draw the same shape. I'll first start out with a vertical line that's longer than this first AD vertical line that I did. And then I'm going to go on the top and maybe draw a segment that's close to the same distance. You're just eyeballing here, but at a right angle. And then the bottom one, again at a right angle, I'm going to extend it out so that it's longer than this top one. And then connect those two. And I'm labeling this very specifically F, G, E, F, G, E, H. And I'm going to say B and G are congruent. E and C are congruent. That's a weird one. And then on A, B, C, D, just around in a clockwise rotation 6, 5.4, 4, and 5. Those are the side lengths. And we're going to have 10.8, 8, 10, and 12. Alright, this is what it would look like for your given information. You would see this picture, you'd see those instructions. Determine whether the polygons are similar. If so, write the similarity ratio and similarity statement. So for the polygons to be similar, we need the corresponding angles to be congruent. That's a little bit tricky. What's one of the corresponding one of the pairs of corresponding angles? That's what I'm going to say first. So let's say corresponding angles. Let's just write them down. What corresponds with angle B? That's, I think, the easiest one. G? Okay. So angle B, is it congruent? They are congruent. Congruent to angle G. Well, C corresponds to E, so angle C, and they are congruent, corresponds to angle E. Oh, the next part is a little bit weird. Angle A is congruent to angle F, but it also corresponds, because we're talking about corresponding angles. It corresponds to angle F. A is congruent to D, and A is congruent to H as well. But it's not corresponding with those angles. Corresponding means in the same position. So we have that, and then the last one, angle D corresponding with angle H. So all corresponding angles are congruent, and we now need to know, are all the sides proportional? So, proportional, what does that mean? That means if we look at the ratio, a proportion is talking about a ratio, and a ratio is just a fraction. So if we look at the corresponding side for the small one, so let's say corresponding sides. What side does AB correspond with? Yeah, GF. This the longest one here, longest one here. So GF. This is what I'm doing to find out this ratio. First I have, well, AB over GF. That would be 6 over 12. A ratio is a fraction, so I don't want you to get decimals for this. No decimals. You're just reducing. And you can divide by 6, right? So we get 1/2. So the ratio between AB and GF is 1/2. And their corresponding sides here. If it asks you to find the corresponding sides, you can just say that they're corresponding like this. Just write a fraction without getting the ratio. If they ask for the ratio, then write the number. And we can do that for all of the corresponding sides. So AB we did, BC. Notice I'm going from the small to the big. Small is in the top, large is in the bottom. You have to be consistent with that throughout the whole thing. So BC and GE, that would be 5.4 and 10.8. You can move the decimal over. 54, because I want it as a fraction, not as a decimal. So 54 over 108, and these are divisible by 54 each. And we do get 1/2 again. If all of the ratios for the corresponding sides, if all of those ratios are the same, then the sides are proportional. That's what we're looking for. So what do we have next? DC over EH. DC, well, let's say HE. That really doesn't matter. And that would be 4 over 8, which is, of course, 1/2. which is what we wanted. And let's see, AD over FH, and that would be, I'm doing this wrong, 5 over 10, yep, and that is 1/2. Since they're all the same, we would say yes, proportional sides, the corresponding sides rather, but we have corresponding angles congruent, we have proportional sides, so then we can say yes, they are similar, yes, similar, similarity ratio, and similarity statement. Can you guys see that? Yeah. Raise your hand if you think, actually, the similarity ratio is 1/2. If any of these are different, then we would say no, they're not. Whoops. Similarity ratio is 1/2. If any of these ratios are different, we would say not similar. If the angles didn't, like they weren't congruent, we'd say it's not similar. Both of them need to be true in order to say this part. The similarity statement, all we're doing is just matching up the angles. So A, B, C, D, A matches with F, and we already wrote that. Just so make sure the order is the same, and we're going to do that symbol. That means similar. So A matches with F, A with F, we already wrote it down. B, which is next, B matches with, G. So F, G, C matches with E, and D matches with H. So that's the similarity statement. That's the similarity ratio. And we'll